It was August 22, 1917, during a World War I, and an attack was underway near Ypres. The British infantry was supported by several of the newly developed Mark IV tanks. The battlefield was covered in mud and pitted with craters. One of the tanks, named Freybentos, was advancing slowly. Captain Donald Richardson was walking alongside his tank, directing the driver, who had poor visibility due to the treacherous terrain. As Freybentos advanced, it successfully took out a German machine gun, prompting cheers from inside the tank as they moved towards more German guns. Still outside under heavy fire, Richardson was hit in the leg and forced to retreat back inside Freybentos. With all the crew now inside, the driver, George Hill, was hit and fell out of his seat. The tank continued moving without anyone steering, and Richardson attempted to grab the controls, but it was too late. The tank veered and slid into a deep crater. The Mark IV came to a halt, stuck fast in the mud of Passchendaele. The crew of 9 found themselves trapped in no man's land during one of the war's most ferocious battles. Surrounded by Germans, their actions and the tank would become legendary. Sergeant Robert Misson and Lance Corporal Ernest Brady stepped outside to assess the situation and possibly deploy the unditching gear. Mark IV tanks were equipped with a large beam covered in sheet metal that could be attached to the tracks to help get unstuck. While working, they heard the sound of bullets hitting the armor. The Germans were not just close, they were only 30 yards away. Misson quickly dashed back inside Freybentos, narrowly escaping the hail of fire. Lance Corporal Brady was not so fortunate. He was caught by enemy fire while working on the other side of the tank and fell in the mud, never to rise again. Inside the Mark IV, conditions were cramped and hot, but that was the least of their concerns. The crew had to contend with a constant barrage of bullets, bombs, and heavy artillery. Unfortunately, they were also at risk of friendly fire. The men were sitting in a high-tech gold mine. The Mark IV offered better protection than most technology at the time. The Allies would rather destroy the crew than let the Germans capture the secret weapon. To make matters worse, the main tank guns were at the wrong angle and could not be used to blast the Germans. Therefore, the men had to rely on whatever handheld weapons they had to fight back. The grim situation was slightly lightened by the name of the tank, Freybentos. Captain Richardson had named his Mark IV after a popular brand of canned meat at the time, meat surrounded by metal. It was an ironic joke meant to inspire the men during wartime. The Germans intensified their attack, and a soldier managed to throw a grenade into the tank. After what must have been a heart-stopping few seconds, the crew grabbed the grenade and tossed it out. Incredibly, the men were holding off the Germans using only their handheld weapons. Metal fragments bounced off the tank during these fierce exchanges, further injuring the crew. Of the 8 brave souls remaining, 7 had been injured by shrapnel. How much longer could they withstand not only the German onslaught, but also the threat from their own side? The hours turned into days of heavy fighting, with the Germans attacking and the crew forcing them back again and again. As the days dragged on, they were forced to drink water from the radiator. Desperately hot by day and exhausted and freezing by night, the Freybentos crew spent an agonizing 3 days and 2 nights repelling the enemy. Completely exhausted and realizing that no help was coming, they had to face the fact that they were on their own. If they were to stand a chance of survival, they would have to make it across no man's land. Crossing no man's land was a deadly undertaking, and the crew knew that the British infantry would shoot anything moving from the German positions. Richardson decided the best option was for the men to leave the Mark IV one at a time, starting with Sergeant Misson. Misson had the most dangerous job of all, crawling across the British lines to warn them not to open fire. His body stiff and aching, Misson ran the gauntlet, sliding on his belly through the mud of Passchendaele, with bullets and explosions all around him. He was a sitting, or rather crawling duck for anyone with an itchy trigger finger. After many close calls covered in mud, Misson managed to get close enough to shout to the British lines and warn them he was on their side. Once he had made it across and warned the British not to open fire, it was the turn of Captain Richardson and the surviving crew to start the perilous crossing. They decided to drag their Lewis guns along for the trip so they wouldn't be seized by the enemy. To their relief, they made it over the lines and were finally out from under the Germans. The Passchendaele campaign had started in late July and wouldn't end until November. Thankfully, the Freybentos crew was free from the carnage, though they had endured a grueling 60 hours in a situation so perilous it's difficult to imagine. Captain Richardson and his team received medals for gallantry. The Military Cross was awarded to Richardson and Hill. Misson and Maury were awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Arthur, Binley, Budd, and Hayton were given the Military Medal. This made them the most decorated tank crew of World War I, an honor they richly deserved. We wouldn't know the details of this astonishing story of courage under fire were it not for a discovery made in 2017. The Tank Museum in England holds archives of those serving in World War I, and to their surprise, they discovered Sergeant Misson's personal written account of what took place. One of the more attention-grabbing pieces you can see there is a protective mask made partly from chainmail, designed to repel shrapnel. There's also a Mark IV tank on display so visitors can get up close to the legendary vehicle itself. After a short recovery, Captain Richardson returned to the front and continued the fight. He boarded another tank and rolled into the Battle of Cambrai. Its name, the Freybentos II.